We will now proceed to the panel discussion, and I'll pass the mic to the moderator, Mr. David Liew.
I think every one of us is waiting for this to start. So let me kickstart this by asking our panel to introduce themselves. So a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm Liew from Colin and Partners. I'm a partner there, and I started the BCI practice group. That's blockchain, crypto, and ICOs. And I have a very passionate interest in this from a few years back. And if you call me later, I'll tell you what I did a few years back. Yeah, so basically what we do is we do the full range from helping people who are coders to do their blockchain projects, and as well as clients who basically have blockchain applications for their business, freight forwarders, money remittance people, and things like that. And of course, there's the big elephant in the room, which is ICOs. So we do the whole range of that. I'll pass you on to Adrian.
Hi, I'm Adrian. I'm a first year associate in Colin and Partners. I'm part of the PCI team together with Mr. Quek and Samuel here. I think what interests me about this whole space is also meeting and listening to the many different ideas that our prospective clients also come to us to share. And I have very good hopes about the development of this space.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Samuel. I'm an incoming associate, but right now I'm a paralegal at Colin. So I work for Mr. Quek on BCI matters. That's blockchain, ICO, and cryptocurrency, right?
Hi everyone, I'm Val. I will leave it to them.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Wanyi. I'm a partner at PwC Venture Hub, leading the FinTech practice. So a lot of people, I think, you think that PwC is really just an accounting firm servicing most of the bigger firms. But Venture Hub really is our own innovation, if I can say that. We are working with startups from FinTech to MedTech to Health Tech, but for me it's just FinTech, really wanting to create a one-stop shop for startups, offering traditional services, as you may imagine, tax, accounting, but also going out to collaborating. Could be what we call a joint business relationship, or even investing in the startup ourselves. So I'll share a bit more later.
Hi, I'm Coris from Coris AM, so I just leave it to the...
Okay, thank you for the introduction. I think we have a very diverse team, different parts of the community here, to share with us their views on the coming regulations. The FinTech and blockchain landscape is evolving very rapidly, and regulation is like a cloud hanging over us. And some of us worry that regulations will hamper innovation. Others think that regulations can't come fast enough because it will clarify everything. So I will kick off the first question to the panel. This is, what advice would you give to startups when faced with new regulations? What kind of strategy should they adopt? We will start with Mr. Quek.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned clouds. Clouds can be good because clouds bring rain. Okay. So the first piece of advice I have actually when I meet potential clients is for them to be forward-looking. They can't be, living in the past. As we all know, or at least we should know, ICOs in the past were a very different creature from where they are now. All right. And actually it's for the better, because things have to come to the light of day. We cannot hide under a stone. We cannot hide under like a tortoise, put your head into the shell. Regulations are forward-looking. So one of the things that I tell potential clients is to anticipate the regulations. It's quite clear where the regulations, which directions they are going to be headed. So it is not difficult if you have proper legal advice. So founders should obtain proper legal advice, and this means getting your lawyer correct, getting your tax advisor correct, getting your ICO advisor correct, getting your KYC service provider correct. And if you feel that your white paper needs a bit of spit and polish, go and see a good technical writer. Okay, that's pretty important. Also, you need to see people who are good at media communication and that ugly word, the media influencers, all right? And it's also helpful for you to have a good feel of the market. We have a dialogue with the authorities, and we come up with some ideas which we hope they will take it under the belt and put it in a positive light, where we see regulation right rather than regulation light. Yeah? The regulation is important because it ensures the medium to long-term future of this space. Because without it, you see what's happened in China, you see what's happened in South Korea. You know, all those that do things a lot in the dark have to scuttle when the light of day comes up. So in these countries, in China it's totally banned. In South Korea, it's banned for now, although I understand they're flip-flopping over it. So back to the piece of advice is, be frank and open with your advisors. Tell them actually what you want to do and how you're going to do it, and they can tell you whether or not it's going to trigger any licenses, any regulatory requirements or approvals. And that's how then you go back, if necessary, to the drawing board to see whether your ICO roadmap and your business plan, whether it's congruent with what needs to be done from a legal perspective. It's very practical, and it's actually common sense. So you don't need a lawyer to tell you that, but unfortunately sometimes I find that it is necessary for us to throw some water, not necessarily cold water, but some water onto the founder's head to make them wake up and say, okay, you know, these are good ideas, but we may need to moderate them or take a step back and slow down the pace of the ICO roadmap. Yeah? Very often we get people who come on Monday and they say, oh, we want to register the company, but we're going to do our pre-sale, private sale day after tomorrow. So we said, really? If you're prepared, we can help you do it. But most often, they are not really up to that stage where they can fly off the starting point and do a Carl Lewis 100-meter dash. Yeah, so basically, I think the piece of advice I have is that you must anticipate regulations. Don't go jurisdiction shopping for the sake of finding a jurisdiction which has no regulations. It really doesn't help when you want to open a bank account, when you want to expand your business. No, you need to go to a jurisdiction where there's a confluence of positive factors. All right, good law, good transparency of its court system, judicial system, as well as a region where you can jump off for your business for scaling up your business plans. Okay, I mean, it's all common sense, as I said, but again, sometimes the lawyer's role is to help wrap all that common sense so that it goes through whatever legal requirements that are necessary in that jurisdiction. So wherever you go, whichever country you choose to go, check with the legal, check with the tax people to see what are the requirements before you sort of cast your business plan or your white paper in concrete. That's me.
Okay, thank you. Adrian? I think he shared a lot already. I think have confidence in your own product. Stick to your business plan. Be open to ideas. Be open to advice. But what is important in the end of the day is if you have a solid product, believe in it, and see how your product can fit in within the legislative framework and the regulatory framework, and then do the necessary and get necessary licenses, regulatory approvals, and I think in the long run you will definitely reap the benefits of it.
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, so as Adrian and Mr. Quek have shared, I don't think regulation is the end of the road. Quite a lot of our clients or prospective clients, when they hear regulation, they want to run away. So I think what instead we should do is we should approach regulation with an open mind, and especially with MAS, they look like they're going to be somewhat progressive on this. So if your product looks like it's going to require certain kinds of licenses, then approach it with an open mind. If you can tweak it to make it not fall under that, then that's fine. But don't change your whole product just because you wanted to fit a certain kind of utility function. And whatever you do, yes, as Mr. Quek has said, don't go jurisdiction shopping just so that you can avoid regulation.
Next bell.
I think planning ahead. So we started planning our ICO like from last August. So from all the follow-ups with our lawyer and also notification to MAS that we are doing an ICO. That also took some time to really clear the product and also project like roadmap. So I think we have to work closely with your lawyer because along the way we have like potential competitors that actually try to either copy or like try to do something. By working very closely with your lawyer and also the clearing the regulation, it can actually help you in the very long run. If you want to build a business long term, you need to make sure that you get all these sorted before your ICO. And I think last year during the bull run, everyone was like, oh, let's launch it fast, luckily, we actually work very closely with the lawyer to make sure that everything is done properly, so that KYC process, even having a SAF template, a document to check very clearly. So the SAF document is basically for pre-sale investors, pre-sale buyers, token buyers, to buy the tokens in advance before the crowd sale happens. So all this needs to be done properly, and engage a good lawyer who you know that is able to understand what you want to build and also explore the potential opportunity ahead, because the technology evolved non-stop. Like we launched our blue paper just last week. Back then when we have our white paper, we didn't have the technical details yet because we needed like the community feedback on like the test net that we launched. So it evolves over time, and just get a good lawyer.
I'll keep my answer short and sweet. If I were to wear my PwC salesperson hat, I would say consult a consultant like PwC. But really a trick is, I think you need to make friends in the industry. You need to have a network. When there is any new regulation, actually interpretation, it's quite vague. So it's sometimes the industry that decide what it means. Obviously, MAS might not be that clear on what they want. So I think it's very encouraging to know that actually the industry is very helpful. There are a lot of WhatsApp groups going around, sharing ideas and also consulting each other. So I would say the shortcut actually is, instead of going to a consultant first, ask your friends and then to see how common players in the industry are actually interpreting the new regulation.
Yeah, I think from a licensed venture cap fund management firm's perspective, our investee companies, besides just having, besides having a passion and a good product, I think that our job here is to encourage these investee companies to actually embrace the regulatory frameworks. Yeah, I think I tend to agree very much with the panel of speakers here. Because I think that by embracing this regulatory framework and by following this, I think that you're building a business that's going to be very scalable. And I think that for any good venture cap firms looking for these investees companies that are able to comply with this, I think it's a big plus for us, before we start investing any money out. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's great advice from hearing from all the panels. It seems to be that we should embrace regulation rather than go jurisdiction hopping. Okay, now I'm going to ask them another question. What are you or your organization doing to help startups navigate this minefield? Let's start with Chris.
Yeah, actually for us, as a VC, we do have, incubation and accelerator programs that we help our investee companies, as I presented on the slide about Coris, as well as we have very strong collaboration with with people like ATRR and with other influencers as well, to bring the product into commercialization. So I think this is one of our core kind of a differentiation from a lot of VCs whom actually wouldn't actually do this for the investee companies. A lot of the bigger VCs are just basically investing the money and not providing that kind of important kind of framework for them. Yeah.
Wanyi?
Okay, so now a bit of a sales talk. So at PwC, we do help startups with regulation, from applying licenses to annual or continual monitoring and compliance, and even to regulatory reporting. So that's kind of our DNA. The other thing that we can definitely add value, again, like what I mentioned earlier, it's kind of tapping into our network. So we do have a lot of network of startups or traditional financial institution who has a lot of experience. I think startups come to us to tap on our network to understand and learn from experiences. The other thing that actually we do help is using our kind of connection with MAS or network with MAS to bridge the fact that to bring on, for example, a startup to have a conversation with MES does help to kind of broker that conversation and interpretation of the regulation. So, I mean, if you are interested to know more, I mean, we can speak a bit more later. Yeah.
We're a startup ourselves, so how do we help other startups? Is I think quite a few of them will reach out and ask, oh, how do you do an ICO? First of all, I will try to understand why do they need a token, and then also understand the long-term vision, as well as help them by connecting with potentially PwC, good lawyers, pre-sale VCs. So it's basically connecting them to the whole ecosystem, and let them share more of the ideas, and also share with them a bit about what we have done. And then I always let them know that the space evolved very, very fast. What we had done early this year is very different from now. So as much as we can help, things have evolved. There are a lot more regulations as compared to last year. Early this year, regulations were kicking in, but then things moved very quickly. So the best way is really to make friends, like what Wanyi has suggested. Build your network to be able to get the support whenever you need some help on the business.
I think to add to that is that she showed us that it's possible to go inside MES Sandbox and actually graduate from it. And it's a shining example for a lot of startups out there who still are fearful about regulation, that you should embrace it and you should head into the sandbox if you really aren't here. Because if you do everything correctly, you graduate from it.
So as legal advisors, we don't usually want to interfere in how the business, dictate how the business runs their business. So what we do is we look at the legal aspects. So what we usually get the startups to do is send us their white paper and send us their business plan, and we review them to make sure that at least these are congruent. Then we also make sure that their current plans don't, the product that they have doesn't contravene any legal regulations, or if they require certain kinds of licenses, or if you think it's going to be a security product, advise them as such. So
I think as lawyers, we don't work in a silo. As the panel have already shared, we are all part of a bigger ecosystem. So if I was to say that our services can be categorized into three different parts. Firstly is, as Samuel has shared, giving the legal advice, giving the legal opinion that's necessary. Do not only know what licenses are required, but also those certain exchanges would require a legal opinion, and so sometimes we also give our legal opinion. Secondly, to tie into what the panel has spoken, we also try to build up an ecosystem of context, and we are not experts in everything. So where relevant, we would direct our clients to different parties in the ecosystem, from KYC service providers to ICO advisors to technical writers. And I think only if all the parties in the ecosystem work together, then this industry would grow. Yeah.
Mention the third one already, is it? Okay. No, actually, what we do to help startups, we always happy to meet genuine startups. All right, people who have what they think to be a disruptive idea, which they want to bring forward and see materialize. So we spend quite a lot of time. The first meeting we have, sometimes it's more than first one preliminary meeting. It's pretty intensive. All right, I read as much as I can about these people's backgrounds. I can get their 0.1 version of their draft white paper. Sometimes we do a con call first, so that when we meet face to face, I know the tone and what to tell them. Because very often, some of them are a little bit like living like Alice in Wonderland. They need to have the bad news first, all right? So we are gently firm, and we are holistic lawyers, like what Wanyi says also earlier. We have developed an ecosystem. For the initial start, we had to push very hard because everybody didn't want to stand up and be counted, all right? We had a tough time finding people that we find that we're comfortable to work with. We find that they're on the same wavelength, they share the same values. That's really, really important. We introduce potential clients, even those that don't basically give us the mandate. It's not a prerequisite. To people, the service providers that we feel are suitable for their needs. So we do a bit of matchmaking. Yeah, we have different kinds of potential clients. People who are from Singapore, people from Japan, people from Vietnam, Europeans, and some Americans. And as you know, Chinese have a lot of passports, so we meet many of those as well. But we know from the first interview and the first meeting, the session is very interesting because it can be challenging and it can be daunting, but truth will out. And I find it's good when you speak to your lawyer or your tax person for the first time and you're trying to choose who is the right team to join you. You need to be honest. You need to be upfront. Yeah, it's like going to a doctor and say, I couldn't sleep last night, and then he'll ask you why, and you just tell him part of the story. That's not going to work. The lawyers need to know everything about what you want to do, how you want to do it. There should not be any deep dark secrets, okay? So if the lawyer knows enough, then the lawyer can give you a better idea of whether the ICO roadmap that you have is going to work. So the other thing that we help startups, and we do this without charge, yeah, the first meeting, and also we prepare ICO roadmap to show them how it may turn, or there may be some curves in the road, some forks, some are hard forks, some are soft forks, that sort of thing, and to help them become more realistic about when they're going to be able to reach the finishing point. And there's another thing we always stress, that the finishing point is not, I repeat, it is not the public tranche of your ICO. That's actually after you raise your hard cap, it's the beginning of the next level of the business. Yeah, so we always tell them, I say, hey, your business plan goes on, but your white paper falls off the edge of the table. What happens after this? What happens if you are 2.5 times over what you want in your hard cap? I mean, how do you scale it up? You already have the basic platform, then you have your bells and whistles, all that's in the white paper. If you have on top of that, what are you going to do? So when I met with the deathly silence, I know that maybe these guys are not quite prepared yet. Yeah? So we do our part to help startups, the founders, and sometimes they realize it's actually for their good. They go back to the drawing board and they say we need to retool. We need to recalibrate some of our implementation, and we need to set back the clock on the timetable. So we do what we can as holistic lawyers.
Thank you. I think everybody has learned a fair bit today, but I still want to ask some more questions. And the final question I'll ask is that if you have only one advice to startups to help them improve their general rate of success in this climate, what would it be? Since Val has a mic, maybe Val can start first.
My one advice, wow, that's tough. There's so many things you need to do to survive. The one advice is that you have a great team. That's the most important, because you go through the roller coaster ride within a day, but having the team there can really help you to brace through the difficult times. Like everyone see the rosy part of you have closed the sale, but what's the tough part is after the sale, you have to build the product. You have to ensure that you are delivering what you have promised to the token buyers and the whole ecosystem. On top of that, how your team support you to help other people in the ecosystem. So having a great team is very important. It took me a long time to build the team to where it is today. I'm very grateful because without them, like it's impossible to make it happen. And some people think that, oh, it's okay, I raised the money and that's enough. But without a team of people to actually, like especially last week when we were pushing out the blue paper, the tech team actually worked till like close to midnight to make sure that they have the right details, the technical architecture ready when we deliver to the community and also to our partners.
Wanyi?
After working with a couple of startups, I think one advice I would give is don't be too quick to make decisions. That would apply for everything actually. For example, if you have a potential customer in a different jurisdiction that you are operating in, don't be too quick to just accept and move over. You may overlook a lot of the regulatory or actually operating costs. Same for money. I think it's very enticing to just take the money on the table, but you really need to have rapport and synergies with your investor, such that actually it's for the longer term. So I think in a nutshell, it's not, don't be too quick to make any decision. Yeah.
Chris.
I think the one single advice that from experience dealing with investee companies, I think it's the willingness to overcome difficulties, I think. Yeah, because a lot of investee companies, I think the founders are from, they are very young, they are younger people, I would say. I think in between, we feel that a lot of the investee companies we have spoken to when we flag certain like problems, or my tech team came up with certain problems that they probably cannot overcome at this point, then they just don't want to move forward, and say that this VC is very difficult. But I think we have really genuine investee companies that we have been very successful investing into in the private equity space. And I think that the one single advice that I would like to give to the startup is the willingness to overcome these difficulties, because many times the team here is, the technical advisors here are to help you, yeah, and if you can demonstrate to us that you have that willingness to do it, then I think that it's going to be a great investment for us. Yeah, I think that is the single trait that I've seen in very successful startups. Yeah, so that's my advice. Yeah.
Right, I guess as part of a law firm, our stance is work with your lawyers. We're here to help you. Yeah.
I think I'm repeating myself, but believe in your product and don't be too afraid of regulation. I mean, regulations are is something that protects us and also the consumers. And don't be too averse to regulation. If you have a genuine use case, embrace regulation and try to be the change. Try to talk to MAS, talk to your lawyers, try to have conversations and also be the one that influences how our regulation will be shaped, in the future. And I think this will allow for greater room for the blockchain industry to grow in the future. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think you will all come away with the impression that lawyers cannot stop talking. All right, but I have 2 words: is be prepared. You want to know more? Okay. Be prepared means you need to have the right team. Val's company is an excellent example of what it is to be prepared. Your internal team and your external team must meld. Okay, they must fuse. They must work together. When they sing, you must hear the Vienna Boys Choir. You must hear the song you want. Okay, so be prepared, because if you're not prepared, you basically become inflexible and defensive. So be prepared means that before you go to the starting block, before you want to go into the sandbox, you must already have all your eggs lined up. Okay, so if you're working with other people in the market, your third party, trusted third parties, people who you are also going to be what I call intermediaries with, talk to them first. At least have an understanding that when this comes up, all of you will be ready, and we are ready to go, we all go. Okay? So being prepared is very important. Your internal team, your external team, your mindset. Alright? You have to be strong, because if you are very defensive, we meet some clients who are very defensive. Every time we say something, they either look as if they're going to cry or they want to punch me. Alright? And I said, look, we're your friends. And being a good friend, you have to have exercise tough love. And the Americans have a term, is running an intervention. So what happens is sometimes we see the client and we like them very much personally, but they're running down the wrong track. And I tell them, wrong direction. That road will never bring you to where you want to be. And the question then is how persuasive we are in getting them to agree with our point of view. Yeah? So the smart startups will be prepared. And you have the shining example in Val and her company. So there is a proof case already for that. So it just makes sense for you to have the right team. You need to build your team as well. So sometimes we have clients that come to us and we say, wow, super ambitious. Who are you hiring here? And it's a big silence. I said, who? And they haven't even gone to look at space. They have no CTO, they have no COO, they have nothing. They have OOO, actually. All right, so that frightens us. And as a lawyer, we are a holistic law firm, and we cannot stick to just the law, because the law is living, and to live, you must see, all your senses must be there. So we see, and we tell it like it is. Sometimes I have to, put the thing across nicely, because I believe how you say something is actually as important as what you say. So back again is be prepared.
Thank you. Let's give the panelists a clap. I think we learned a lot from them today. What I can say is that why didn't I meet these guys earlier? Life would be so much easier. Thank you so much for all the advice. We have a few minutes. Anybody who have questions? Gentlemen over there.
I actually have 2 questions. So one is about...
Just a minute, we'll give you the mic.
I actually have 2 questions. One is for Val and one is for the panel generally. So Val, you had a lot of options that you could have raised money through a securities offering, through a loan, through all kinds of things. Why did you choose an ICO, and are you glad in retrospect that you did? The second thing generally to the panel, a lot of ICOs talk about investments, even though they are utility tokens. What is your view about whether white papers should use the word invest, and how would you talk to issuers about how they do the marketing, not just the white paper, but also all the discussions with the community about the potential return on the coin or liquidity? Because ultimately, these are utility tokens that are for a use for whatever product or service the issuers will be offering down the line, not so much the secondary market coming. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So why we choose an ICO route? So we have raised equity round for PolicyPal Singapore, and like we gotten our insurance broker license, so that actually helped us to kickstart the business. We're thinking what's next, right? So do we get licensed in every single country? Yeah, we could do that. Or can we actually help the insurers and also the consumers better? So how do we help the insurers better? Is that how can we ensure that we don't just present the quotes? Can we improve the whole process? Such as the examples I've given, automate the underwriting, taking the data from the consumers to reduce the premiums, automating the claims process, creating new products from what the consumers are looking out for. But to do that, you have to build a whole brand new ecosystem. But to build an ecosystem means that we have to build a community. To build the community, we need to issue a token where everyone will be incentivized to do good in the whole ecosystem. Therefore, we launched an ICO. And I guess the rest will help to answer the question on like the investments.
A tough question. Perhaps one of you can help us out.
Okay, thanks for asking the question. All right. Actually, I have to say, I don't like the word investment. I went to a launch the other day, and I think something may have been lost in translation, but the investment came out a lot in the slides, and I was like, they should have just run it by me first. Okay, now you also use the word utility token. That's also very helpful. At law, there's no statutory definition of a utility token. All right, I mean, other than the plain and simple ERC 20, which is a dumb token, is clearly a utility in that sense. The utility token has no legal meaning. All right, what it is generally used for in the popular sense, it is used in contrast and in opposition to a security token. All right, and under the law in Singapore, security is basically one of three things. It gives a person a share and a right in equity or an option in respect of the share or equity. Second would be a debenture or an option on the debenture. And the third one is a unit in a CIS, a collective investment scheme. Now, if it falls under any of these, you can call it an investment, but which means you have to go the whole hog and basically market it as a security token. Yeah? But when we look at the white paper and the business plan, we try to, and we interview the clients. We also have a questionnaire that is based on a slightly less heavy version of what they do in the States with the US SEC, the Howey test, all right? So from there, we understand more or less what the client intends to do. So we examine all the characteristics of their token, everything, all right? Whether it is investment value, whether it is access to certain services, whether it's efficiency in getting services which you wouldn't normally get at such high speed, or whether it's just opening doors for you. So we look at all the functionalities, not just in terms of number, but in terms of quality. And also, I think different functions of a token are not going to be having the same weightage. So different weightage will also go. So very simply, I always ask the founders, which characteristic of the 3, 4, 5, whatever, do you think you are honestly able to say and comfortable to say is why people will buy my token, all right? And if the answer is, oh, investment value will go up, then we say, okay, then let's not look and fool ourselves to say it's a utility. But there are others we have encountered that actually give very strong functionalities, very, very attractive, and basically I buy those tokens because I want to use them for their functions, all right? I don't wait for the secondary market. I don't wait for them to have an aggressive burning token program either, because I like the idea. I like to be able to use what they offer. So I go ahead. So our threshold legal opinion would basically go on the basis of looking at their business plan, or what we understand in the business plan, and looking at whether or not it's congruent with their white paper, all right? And then the description of the tokens. Some clients have 1 token, some have 2. We have got clients who have 5 tokens, and that gets very, very confusing because even they don't know how the tokens interact with each other, and there's a side chain, it just gets to be a big headache. Yeah. So I hope I've satisfactorily answered your second question.
So I think what you're saying is that the white paper maybe could use the word invest max a couple times, but it depends on how the overall token is marketed. If the investment aspect is marketed in a much greater way than the use aspect, then you're going to have a security issue, as opposed to if the investment aspect is a minor feature in the ICO, and that won't just go to the white paper itself, but actually the overall marketing. When you give your legal opinion, you might only focus on the white paper, but ultimately, when they're going on the road, when they have their website, everything needs to be consistent with that weightage that you had given. Otherwise, you blow up the non-security analysis, which means that you may have issued a security in the Singapore or other jurisdictions without a prospectus, and then that will wreck it overall. You'll lose your exchange listing, etc.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we look at the word investment in a very broad term. Investment does not necessarily just mean return on investment ROI. Okay, it can also mean the value goes up because of its intrinsic nature of the token. It's a bloody good service line. It's a very good product. So I want to buy it. All right. And we have clients who actually say they actually do their token launch in Switzerland. All right, and they come to Singapore because they want to have a big launch roadshow here. They actually come to us for a legal opinion. So we will ask to see the Swiss legal opinion first as a starting point. And then from there, we do our own analysis and see whether it matches up with what the ICO jurisdiction's legal opinion is. So yes, we do not encourage the rah-rah and the play-up of investment in terms of return on investment and monetary terms alone.
A question for you, Mr. Quek. Suppose you have a token which has characteristics of a utility, and at the same time it has characteristics of a security. Isn't it advantageous to classify it as a security? Because in that, if you can legally or legitimately launch it, it would have a much larger investor base, right? What's your view on this?
All right, you are my ideal client. Okay, yes. When you want to err, you err on the side of caution. All right. Okay, I'll tell you something which I tell my clients. Basically, utility token or non-security token versus a security token, they are not mutually exclusive. One, a token can have strong functionalities and therefore qualify as a utility token, but at the same time, it has certain features, undeniably, that make it a security token. So some of these tokens that we come across are hybrid. So when there's a hybrid, we have to dissect the whole token. All right, we have to dissect every function which the founders say can be done. And then we weigh basically the weightage is very important, which is the predominant feature on which the token is being sold. And if the investment value is purely incidental, perhaps you could still go on the path that this is a non-security token. But if the investment factor is very strong and it flavors the whole thing, then we say, look, it's a clear hybrid, but it seems to be moving towards, I want to be a security token. So let's do it and go the whole hog and treat it as a security offering. Yeah, that's the answer. Certainly. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The lawyer's role is to outline the pros and cons and the risk and how heavy the risks are. We cannot make the business decision. The business decision is a commercial decision that the founders have to make. But we guide them and we give enough information so that they can make a considered decision. That's very important. I don't say what I think the client wants to hear, because that's really a total fail as a lawyer and as a professional. That's a no-no, okay? You go to a lawyer to have the lowdown on what something is. You want him to tell you what it is, so that when something goes wrong eventually, if it does, you're not going to be caught holding the baby and say, oh, I wasn't told, all right? So yes, the answer is if you embrace it and you say, okay, if we do it, it's a hybrid, and since you tell us it's a hybrid, but we are quite convinced that it will sell better as a security token, go for it. You know, and it will have definitely wider appeal because of the fact that people can honestly say, I'm buying it for investment. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, one more question from Ben. Can you pass the mic there?
So just a follow-up question to what you were saying earlier. You were talking about using the Howey test to determine whether utility or security. But what I personally find confusing, and I'm a lawyer myself, albeit on the international side, is that the MAS guidance actually doesn't adopt those tests in the granular detail that the SEC has done, and that would almost have been better because the SEC rules are much more nuanced. What you have from the MAS is a guidance note, which in paragraph 3 stated not to be law. And then you have, of course, the Securities and Futures Act, but that has no case law that is actually relevant to an ICO context. So how do you reconcile all of these legal principles when giving an opinion?
Okay, the SEC is everyone's nightmare, okay? And it could be one possible future for Singapore. But I myself personally don't think so, okay? Now, yes, you're right. The SEC they've embraced the Howey test and all that, all the permutations of that. So there is the merit of certainty, but it scared the pants off everybody, yeah? And all the people that we used to work with in the US have run away, all right? They all say now, oh, sorry, I'm busy with banking or I'm busy with my other life, So yes, there's certainty, but unfortunately, they seem to be going to a polar extreme. That's my personal view. Before they can settle down and understand, more of it now. You mentioned the MAS guideline that was issued in November last year. That is a position of, look, here we are. We'll like to wait and see, but for the time being, what we have is we have the SFA, the Securities and Futures Act, and basically the theme that runs through the guideline is basically that if it has the characteristics, if your token possesses the characteristics of a security token, it's not a no-no, but it's obviously something that you have to go the whole hog with the prospectus registration requirement. Yeah? So in that sense, there is, in my view, sufficient certainty to at least know some of the path where it's headed, and the rest of it, I have the ability to put the dots there and join the dots, because there are two possible futures for this. One, it goes the way of the SEC, which makes it very difficult, and the other one is a moderate approach. Australia, England, amongst a few other countries, are going that way. They're basically using, there may not be the ideal situation now, they're using old economy legislation to fit ICOs. So some people will say it's like a square peg in a round hole. But my view is something is better than nothing, and it is the job of everyone in this room who's interested in ICOs, in any way involved in it, entrepreneurs, advisors, VCs, everybody, to actually lobby, yeah, and give feedback. And it's a constant challenge to help people not be too afraid. Yeah, if you always are scared of the dark, and what you sleep at night and what's in your closet, and you'll always be afraid. So you need to take the step and engage the MAS, engage the people you know, to say, okay, we want to do the right thing, all right? But we're not clear where the right thing is. Can you offer some guidance? Now, the MAS is ready to talk, but what happens is you need to show and you need to demonstrate bona fide, you need to demonstrate the ability that you have thought out what you want to do, how you want to do it, and where you think it's regulated.
Right, but don't you think there could be a sort of dangerous situation, because you're not applying the Howey test, so the token might be safe in Singapore, but everywhere outside Singapore, it's quite likely that regulation will follow the US regulation, because that's really seen as a high watermark of securities regulation everywhere. So you're protected in Singapore, but you're exposed everywhere else.
Well, yes, you see, that's absolutely right. But so what we do is we tell them, when we give you the legal opinion, we do so as Singapore lawyers, and we do put the caveat in. If they want to do a piggyback and go somewhere else, we tell them, let me introduce you to my friend, the lawyer from New York or Washington State. All right?
You can send them to me.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
gentleman over there, Ben.
Thanks. Maybe to just switch the side of the panel, but within the same type of questions. I mean, we've heard a lot now about the legal qualifications of the tokens, but what actually makes it interesting to the investor side, learning about whether it is, or looking at it, whether it is a utilities token that is potentially focusing also more on liquidity, lower price, so that it is accessible for everybody, or more towards a securities token that could appreciate in value like a regular security equity. What is more attractive to investors?
I think from a VC point of view, actually for a lot of the investors that I represent, actually from the old traditional way of how they look about investments, I think a lot of them don't really have a very keen understanding of this particular industry. They know they have to get in somehow. Yeah. Our job at Coris is to actually to provide some guidance in terms of their investments, in terms of this blockchain industry, on the functionality of some of the investee companies, that what we are looking for, and also to help them, to educate them, especially their second or third generation, in terms of that this is going to be a good way or to diversify some of your investment portfolio into this. Yeah. So I think for us, what we look at is quite the same as what Mr. Quek had said earlier. I think that for the functionality part, I think it's very important for us for the selection process. Yeah, and I'm not sure whether I answer your question correctly, but a lot of investors have a lot of liquidity, and I think some of these investors have actually participated in a lot of ICOs, maybe in their home countries, that has yielded nothing in return. Yeah, and I think they are a little bit more careful about where they are putting their money into this sector. And most of the investors that I am in touch with have only, basically their only experience or their only exposure to blockchain is cryptocurrencies, basically. Yeah, so they always ask me, you know, Chris, is it possible that I give you like $5 million, you buy like Bitcoins and Ethereum? And I told them that this may not be the best way in terms of you know, investing in money. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? If there are no more questions, I thank you, Ellie. Okay, one last question. That will be the last question.
Hi, thank you everybody. So I have a question to the whole panel. I think we all agree that blockchain technology is really useful. It can benefit many industries, but then again, there are a lot of bad actors in the space. So there are a lot of associations being set up. There's Access Singapore, there's Kita, Global ICO Transparency Alliance. So all these players, I guess they kind of, the general consensus is it's better for the industry itself to self-regulate. But even if the industry itself were to self-regulate, I would say that we would need a lot of big actors that have a lot of influence in the space to come together to actually have any influence on it. Because with decentralized exchanges, for example, basically anybody can come out and trade their tokens without, so it's no longer enough to have the exchange being a gatekeeper to do their KYC. On top of that, I would say we would need to have maybe the platform itself to come out and say, and maybe filter out the projects that are built on it. So for example, NEM is a project that's a platform and it basically allows any project to build on it. So no matter what happens, you will have an avenue for bad actors. In your opinion, how do you think we can combat this so as to promote better projects in the space?
Yeah, I'll give it a go first. I think the problem now in the blockchain industry is that there are way too many protocols in different languages and they are not talking to each other. Obviously, there have been different ways of trying to get around it in terms of having a secure one, a private one, and not so decentralized to keep away the bad players. That could be one way. But I think the one key problem that this industry needs to solve is how do you actually achieve an industry-wide language where everyone can agree with each other and be on the same platform? And that's the whole idea of a blockchain, right? If you have many multiple ones, while it's decentralized but they are not talking to each other, the industry is not So I think I would say actually before we get to kicking out the bad players, we need to actually come to a compromise of actually what is going to be the final protocol, the final language that everyone can use. And then from there, actually, there will be some gatekeepers that can be there, and we have to identify the gatekeepers to make sure that actually this network is secure.
I think there have been different solutions being mooted to try to weed out the bad ICOs. I believe the Ethereum founder has proposed like a DICO, which is like a tap system where you have the funds, a part of the funds locked in escrow first, or at least in a vault, not released directly to the issuer, and then it will be up to the investors and the purchasers. I mean, investors, if that's not right, but purchasers to see if once there's some maybe minimum viable product that is already out in the market, then maybe they'll vote on whether to release it to the funds and the proceeds to the issuer. So I think even that there's this idea of self-regulation, and I think this whole industry is also looking for different ways they can self-regulate. And I think at the end of the day, there's still no right answer on what's the best way to do this, and MAS is also, I believe they are still exploring how best to regulate this. And the most basic, I think you should always definitely respect the AML and CFT requirements, and also to do each issuer should be encouraged to do their own proper KYC. And if they don't have the means to do it, maybe engage a third-party service provider to do the KYC for them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. And with that, I think we've come to the end of the question and answer session. Round of applause for our panel. And I invite everyone to network, to join our networking session after this, and also enjoy some refreshments at the end. Thank you for coming.